Today we'll be examining the current development of the Metropolitan Planning Strategy in regard to transport accessibility and infrastructure. We'll be taking a look at this topic from a number of different perspectives, including a planner, an economist, a property developer and a community representative. I'll be taking a look from the view of a planner. Melbourne is rapidly becoming a 24-hour city. At the moment, around 800,000 people travel throughout the city on a daily basis. This will increase to over 1 million by the year 2030. At the moment, one of the key strategies of the Department of Transport is planning local infrastructure with the goal of developing a more integrated transport system. Now, the next question that is usually asked is, how is this being achieved? One of the actions that are being taken currently is to further the development of infrastructure to aid the promotion of walking and cycling among day-to-day transport users. Another way the Department of Transport is contributing is ensuring the timely delivery of both state and federal public transport projects within the Melbourne metropolitan area. Victoria's Public Transport Authority has recently released a 20-year plan that is aimed at bringing Melbourne into the future. One major way this is going to be completed is by adopting the designs of some of the top European railway models. Some of these projected advancements are the implementation of high-capacity trains, which will consist of 10 carriages, high-capacity signalling systems, and also the extension of current lines and the duplication of some tracks in inner Melbourne. Another exciting plan which is expected to be completed in the next 15 years is a rail link to Melbourne Airport. As a planner, one of the key areas in Melbourne that requires improvement is the integration between trams and rail lines. The bus system also currently operates independently of the train network. This separation inhibits the benefits obtained from merging these two modes of transport together. Cycling is also growing in popularity, as many people see it as a cost-effective way to beat inner-city traffic while exercising. Currently there is a 4-year plan which was implemented last year. The main focuses of this plan are to plan and deliver a more connected cycling network, also the construction of a higher quality route system for cycling commuters, and the increase of participation across cycling in and around Melbourne, whilst ensuring the improvement of bicycle safety.
Hi, my name is Ben McKinnon and I'm a property developer focused on transport infrastructure projects. Most infrastructure projects rely on strong government support and funding while also requiring major support from the community. The Melbourne to 2030 planning policy aims to integrate transport and land use planning to ensure that the best transport accessibility outcomes are reached. Victoria faces numerous transport challenges which, if left neglected, will constrain growth and opportunities available to all Victorians. Some of the key transport infrastructure projects that are essential to creating greater accessibility to the community of metropolitan Melbourne are the East-West Link, to link the Eastern Freeway to the Western Ring Road, the Melbourne Metro rail improvements to link the Dandenong and Sunbury rail corridors, as well as duplicating some lines, the light rail along the Eastern Freeway to Doncaster, and improvements to bicycle lanes to make Melbourne more of a cycling city. The recent Melbourne City Council budget for 2013-2014 includes $1.5 million to install green pavements and safety rumble strips along key cycling hotspots that will encourage more commuters to cycle rather than drive. And that's just one example of how governments are starting to plan to make Melbourne more of a cycling city. As a developer, it's also important to assess travel demand management. The government has set a goal to reduce car dependency by 20% before 2020. That will only be possible by achieving a shift towards integrated public transport that may drive major changes in travel behaviour. All residential developments should now include bicycle storage to at least give residents the option, and most developers will also look to provide strong links to public transport options as a high priority. One of the major issues facing us as developers is that it is increasingly difficult to deliver infrastructure projects within budget in the tight fiscal environment we're currently operating in, with escalated construction costs. We feel that a partnering between public and private sectors to look at alternative funding mechanisms will enable better delivery of projects with increased innovation and technical solutions, and that it is absolutely essential for governments to continue to commit funding to metropolitan Melbourne's increasing public transport and general transport needs.
Oh, why hello there. I was just in the middle of writing a report for the Premier regarding Melbourne's metropolitan planning strategy and its necessary provisions for transport and infrastructure. My name is Will Bennett and I'm a very important economist. During this video, I intend to highlight some of the key economic challenges facing Melbourne as a city, in particular with regards to transport and infrastructure. With steady long-term growth of GDP, the main driver to change of Melbourne as a city is and is predicted to continue to be population growth. Statistics show Melbourne is dominating Australia's population growth, adding roughly 77,000 people to its total population in the period of 2011 to 2012, and this figure is increasing yearly. Also, for the 11th year in a row, the Bureau of Statistics recorded Melbourne as leading the population growth of all the major cities in Australia. This demonstrates how critical it is that Melbourne implements a detailed and effective framework of policy to accommodate this rapid growth, so that we can continue to enjoy the quality of living, competition and productivity that the city offers today. The current plan for growth, Melbourne 2030, directs growth to activity centres and 5 designated growth areas. The plan consists of 12 green wedges and an urban growth boundary to manage the outward growth of metropolitan Melbourne. The green wedges address the need to acknowledge environmental preservation and could be economically described as a positive externality. Although the preservation of certain areas may not provide an immediate productive value in economic terms, it has been considered an important moral obligation of our generation, and for that reason has a positive externality on Australia and perhaps the world as a whole. The urban growth boundary is also an integral principle of the Melbourne 2030 planning strategy. Melbourne is ranked 25th in size by measurement of area, and yet doesn't even make it into the top 100 for population. And the urban growth boundary is a measure taken to address this. World cities of comparable area to Melbourne, such as Mexico City, Moscow and London, sustain populations of over 10 million, which demonstrates the potential of high density living in tackling the population increase in Melbourne. The question, however, is, does it present a socially and economically favourable outcome? The answer in regards to transportation and infrastructure is yes, if it is well planned for and sufficiently publicly funded. Obviously, a public transport network can save tremendously on fixed costs if the distance it must cover is reduced. This is one benefit of a high-density city. However, without appropriate public investment as a city in infrastructure, as a city becomes more compact, the ability for the population to move freely becomes more constricted. People commuting by cars will be the first to feel the pressure of the increase in population and seek to find alternate methods of transport. This is where the government has an opportunity to improve commute times through the funding of a premium rail service. In updating the existing rail infrastructure, creating new lines and more frequent services, people will be offered an economically cheaper, faster and more socially desirable outcome. Furthermore, the concept of directing growth to activity areas is a way of encouraging high-density residential living without burdening the city's central business district with the entire load. In doing this, the pressure on inner-city transport is also relieved somewhat, as separate business district hubs are created around the city. This is representative of the multiple nuclei model developed by Harrison Ullman in 1945. Seasonally adjusted, the GDP growth of Australia in the fourth quarter of 2012 was 0.6%, which is symbolic of the current world economic climate. However, Australia still has a relatively low net debt to GDP percentage compared to other economies in the developed world. In conclusion, Australia is well positioned to continue to benefit from the growth of Asian nations in the future and will likely remain a wealthy country per capita. For that reason, it is important that government makes the necessary investments in public transport and infrastructure for Melbourne 2030.
As a public transport user, my main concern is the future growth of Melbourne's rail system. The expansion of Melbourne's metropolitan train service is something that will be required, as urban growth corridors are currently expanding. I am pleased with the recent efforts made by the government in redeveloping some of the older train stations, and also the addition of new ones such as Williams Landing in the western suburbs of Melbourne. This infrastructure will help service a large population in a growing area. Another factor that could be improved is the efficiency of the train services. Last month, only 83% of trains ran on time. One simple way of making life easier for suburban rail users such as myself would be the further integration of different public transport modes, like buses and trains. Even something simple like timetabling these two services so that the bus service is in sync with the train service would make a big difference.
As a community member that relies on a car for transport, I have a few major concerns for Victoria's future road users. The streets of metropolitan Melbourne seem to be getting busier and more congested by the day, particularly on the freeways and major arterial roads leading to the CBD. As a regular user of Eastlink and the Eastern Freeway, I'm keen to see the proposed East-West Freeway link come to fruition, which will save me a considerable amount of time when driving to the other side of the city. Also important to me is to not have increasing costs for the new roads, as cost of living pressure is already taking its toll. I urge the Victorian Government and urban planners to implement these plans as soon as possible so that congestion doesn't get any worse.